In the list of European empires that colonized Africa, one is glaringly absent: Russia. Though the Russian Empire was a well-established imperialist force by the 19th century, it did not rush to colonize Africa. But that doesn't mean Russians were not interested in Africa. In Djibouti, East Africa, one daring explorer, Nikolai Akhanov, established a Russian colony all by himself. The colony didn't last beyond a month. Akhanov's crazy dream came to an abrupt end. Who was Akhanov and why did he join the European scramble for Africa? Before we discuss his doomed mission, let us talk briefly about why Russia didn't colonize Africa on a large scale. So why didn't Russia try to colonize Africa? In this video we explain. By the early 19th century, the Russian Empire was the largest empire in the world. Conquering and ruling new territories was an official state policy of the Russian Empire. Which makes us question, why didn't Russia attempt to colonize Africa? Russians were interested in setting up trading colonies and spreading Christianity in Africa. But the attempt to do so was a half-hearted one. To understand why Russia never went all in for Africa, unlike France, Germany, Britain, and Belgium, we need to look at Russia's geography. To set up colonies in Africa, Russians would have to go through the Black Sea via the Ottoman Empire, which wasn't a friendly power. Russians and the Ottomans were engaged in centuries of warfare, with the Crimean War in the mid-19th century leaving a bitter taste in the mouths of the two empires, assuming the Ottomans allowed Russians to go through the Bosphorus and Dardanelles Straits. The British would block them at Suez Canal. The second route was via St. Petersburg, going through the Baltic Sea, into the North Sea, and then the Atlantic Ocean. This route would have to pass through the waters of Denmark and Sweden, which could create trouble for the Russians. There was always the fear of being intercepted by rival British ships. The last route would be through Vladivostok, across China, India, Persia leading into Africa. This was a long and risky route that would be expensive to maintain. As Russian Empire lacked proper access to Africa, the authorities felt risking soldiers and resources to a land far off made little sense. The Russian Empire liked to keep conquered regions under their direct control. Hence, they focused on Eastern Europe and Central Asia where they could police the territories. Clashing with another imperial power such as the Ottomans or Persians for territory made more sense to the Russians. Such wars were profitable as the Russian Empire gained new lands during the eventual peace treaties. Russians were not experts at maintaining overseas territories. The famous sale of Alaska to the United States is an example of Russia's failure to control lands far from St. Petersburg, the capital of the Russian Empire. However, not all Russians agreed with the government's disinterest in Africa. Entrepreneurs, priests, few military officials, and private citizens understood why Africa was important. One such man, who shared a different vision of Africa than the Tsars, was Nikolai Chinkov. First, some history on Russia's aspirations for Africa before we get to Akhanov. A colony in Africa was strongly supported by clerics, even if the administration didn't pursue an open policy of colonization. A special focus of Russia's attention was Ethiopia. Perhaps Russia's intense interest in it was influenced by Ethiopia's status as the sole independent African nation. Both the Russian clergy and the Ethiopian Coptic churches belonged to the Orthodox branch of Christianity. Religion had an important role in determining whether to establish a colony. Any missionary activity in the 19th century seldom took place without tacit approval by the government. Though Russians were not open about their imperial desires in Africa, they wanted to test the feasibility of setting up a Russian colony. Enter explorer and pilgrim, Nikolai Ivanovich Akhanov. Akhanov's first voyage to Africa was in 1883, when he visited Ethiopia. 5 years later, after returning to Russia, he started gathering support for another expedition to Africa. Besides the obvious interest of the Russian clergy, Russian business owners were also interested in setting up trading ports in Africa. Some Cossacks joined Akhanov after he assured him that the local sultan had given him land in East Africa. Cossacks were a semi-nomadic Slavic people known for their military prowess in the Russian Empire. In the 1880s, Djibouti was known as French Somaliland. The sultans of the states Issa and Afar signed a treaty with France in 1862, ceding land to the French to set up colonies, in what the French named as French Somaliland. On the 10th of December 1888, Akhanov and 165 Cossacks boarded the ship Kornilov from Odessa, in Ukraine, to Alexandria in Egypt. The expedition changed ships at Alexandria and traveled on a Russian ship to Port Said in northeast Egypt. Akhanov leased the Austrian ship Amphitrite at Port Said and arrived in the Gulf of Tadjoura. In French Somaliland, on January 6, 1889. Sagallo was the name of the village that Akhanov and his men set foot in. In Sagallo, the Russian expedition discovered an abandoned Egyptian fort and christened it New Moscow. To celebrate the birth of their new colony, the Russians flew a flag and named it Russian Somaliland. They built a tent serving as a church of Saint Nicholas. Akhanov had a tough time controlling his fellow sailors. The Cossacks began raiding neighboring villages for food, creating problems for Akhanov, but he settled the disputes by paying 60 francs to the local sultan. You are wondering, everything seems fine for the Russians. What could go wrong? Sagallo was in French Somaliland, which, as the name implies, was under French authority. They had a problem with a Russian flag flying over their land. As you may imagine, the French favored diplomatic means of resolving the issue at hand. Russia's diplomats were summoned to Paris to explain why a Russian flag was flying over a French-controlled area of Africa. Russia's answer to defuse the crisis was simple: disown Akhanov and his mission. Since the Tsar had not commissioned the voyage and Akhanov paid for it, the Russian authorities had no trouble throwing the expedition under the bus. The French could do as they pleased with Akhanov. Rumors circulated in the French press that the number of Russian colonists was increasing. Panicked, the French showed up in New Moscow with a cruiser ship and 3 gunboats on the 5th of February 1889. They gave the Russians an ultimatum of surrender. Akhanov failed to recognize the gravity of the situation, and the French pounded the village with artillery fire. 6 Russian colonists died, and another 22 were injured. Akhanov surrendered. The French authorities deported the Russian settlers. New Moscow was abandoned within a month of its discovery. Sadly for Akhanov, there was no hero's welcome in Russia. The authorities prosecuted him for disobeying the Tsar and piracy. All participants on the mission were arrested and sent to a prison in Odessa. Russia's half-hearted attempt to set up a colony in East Africa ended in spectacular failure. There was no official support for Akhanov's mission, which can explain why he struggled to establish a foothold in Africa. What if Akhanov was successful? How would it change the future of Africa? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.